Hello, Jeff.
Hello,
How are
Peter.
you? How's it going? All right. So we are officially live now. And I'm going to just, let's see. The event starts, it still says it starts soon, which is weird. Um, I don't know why it does that, you know, but whatevs.
It
It is
is
what
what
it
it
is.
is.
It says it's starting soon. And there it is.
We got to bring.
There I am.
Okay.
There you are. There we all are. It's you and I. It's you and I. And hopefully our special guest makes it in. She's flying in from the West Coast. So, um, Jeff, you know what we're doing here, right?
Oh yeah, I know what we're doing.
You know what we're doing here. I don't know if anybody else knows what we're doing because there's nobody else here but you and I. Um, but that's fine. I'll give it a second. We can banter a little bit, and just see if anything happens. Um, you know, if anybody's there, let me know.
Oh, I see Allison's there.
Where's Allison? Allison is here.
Yeah.
Hey, Allison's here. All right, we're going to let her in just a second, and we're going to start this bad boy up. We will put her in just a moment, and I want to present real quick here something. Just a let's see. Um, okay, all right. Welcome to the LinkedIn Live version of Where the Dogs of Society Howl, and it's brought to you today in part by the makers of Chilk. Chilk and milk together at last. And why not? Because it's a delightful room temperature drink. Room temp is the new chilled, of course. Finally, the tepid combination of Chilk and milk come together as a delicious, nutritious, hard to choke back drink. I hope everyone makes sure that they demand that their local store goes out and stocks Chilk for everything from Chilk for kids, Choco Chilk, Chilk bars, Chilk Light, that's the alcoholic version, Chilk Silver for the over 50 crowd. I fall into that group. Jeff, how about you?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
of course, Chilk Keto is one of your favorites, Jeff.
Yes, low carb.
So I just wanted to.
I heard we're working on a chilk with extra protein.
Yes, we are. And of course, Chilk is, unscientifically proven to do something to the brain. It's also good for bone softening, great for weight loss, great for building muscle. Of course, weightlifting helps with that too. Mood and heart health. A lot of the good things.
It's
So
all the good stuff.
all the good stuff. And again, our non-accredited science team has put some of this information together for us. So we're excited about that, and we thank them greatly for it. All right. So without further ado, today we are talking about brand photography, something we deal with every day, even though we're not the photographers. I repeat, whilst I own an iPhone, Jeff, you have an iPhone?
I do. I
We're
do have an
not
iPhone.
actually photographers. So, image problems, stock versus shot. That's what we're talking about. Get your visuals right for your brand. Specifically the difference between, hello, who's calling me? No, thank you. Specifically talking about the difference between getting your photography done by a professional, of which we have one here in the waiting room for us, and she's going to join us in a moment. But whether you're going to use stock or use an actual photographer. And the other part of this whole thing, headache, nightmare, joy, if you will, is that who are you hiring to do the photography? Jeff, recently we have gone through a scad of client projects where people have hired what? It's brand photography, and they've hired a whom?
Perhaps a wedding photographer?
A wedding photographer to take pictures of t-shirts, hats, shoes, whatnot. Seems to not make sense. If you are getting married, I would not hire a brand photographer or a food photographer. Perhaps I might look for someone specific to that group. And without further ado, that's going to bring our guest on, Miss Alison Ashton, all the way from sunny California. I'm going to drop her right in. Hey, Alison, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Thanks for coming on with us today.
You.
Absolutely. So if you
Thank you.
would, for anyone that's listening, please explain a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and what we're going to talk about and how it relates.
Well, I have I have a studio called Content Kitchen, and I specialize in food photography. I also do a lot of recipe development. My background, I come out of working for food magazines. I was a senior food editor at Cooking Light for a number of years, and I've freelanced both on the editorial and the brand side. So, editorially, I did work with Parade for a long time, Parade magazine. And then on the brand side, I've done work with La Tortilla Factory, Hatch Chili Company, recently for 505 Southwestern, and also for a company called Nourish Evolution, which specializes in healthy meal plans. So, those are some of the clients that I've worked with. So I've covered both sides of the equation, editorial and brand, which falls under commercial. They're kind of two different things. Sometimes there's some overlap. It kind of depends really on what a brand is looking for specifically to their needs. So,
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times we, as Jeff and I were saying, we have got a few different projects that we've done in the past where, you know, maybe, you know, it's someone that's not the client, maybe they know or they're friends with, and, or maybe they're a photographer of one sort of level of experience or another. What are your thoughts on, you know, for brands and companies, finding the right photographer? Do you have any sort of tips, tricks, or advice
yeah,
on that?
yeah, because I think when you're a brand, particularly if you're a smaller brand, but all brands have a budget, right? So it's an investment. And so when you think of it in terms of an investment, you're willing to invest your marketing budget or some of your marketing budget into getting images or video or both, whatever you need. I think, yeah, I think it really makes sense to look for photographers who are going to deliver the types of assets you're going to need. Because you mentioned a wedding photographer, and I would never say never, because if
Mm.
your brand was you were trying to reach a market, people who are planning weddings, doing weddings, you're a wedding planner, you offer services or products, a really great wedding photographer might actually be a great fit for you. If you are doing kind of home products, that kind of thing, you want a photographer who specializes in interiors. And
Mm.
that might even overlap with people who do real estate photography. That is a very robust specialty. And that might actually be a good fit for you. You know, if you're a restaurant, you need images of your food
Mhm.
for all sorts of things. You probably want to get someone who specializes in food. Um, and there are people who even do, I mean, photographers can get pretty specialized. There are people who specialize in cocktail photography, which is a specialty, right? So if you are a bar and or you are a spirits company and you've got, you know, it would be a good idea to really look for that photographer who specializes not just in food, but also in beverage, in cocktails. They're going to get the kind of images that you need.
And beyond that, what do you think about like you know, I look at that and go, you know, it doesn't matter what your specialty is in photography. If you've had the time and you've got the experience and you've got the eye for it, you know about composition and orientation and lighting and you know how to capture moments. That's great. You know, I guess I think of it sometimes and I go, you know, we're doing brand photography for, let's say, and Jeff will go to this, you know, audio speakers or something, but you're bringing in the guy that does the you know elementary school class pictures. You know, I just feel like it may not be the right place for that. You may be taking a bit of a risk, especially
You
because
probably are.
you're
You probably are taking a bit of a risk, and if you are doing that, because if you want to, let's say you've got high-end audio equipment, you really want to work with somebody locally who's on site, depending where you are. Your options for somebody who specializes may be narrower, right? You know, it just, you know, maybe narrower for you. Um, so you may have to make some compromises, but you should also have realistic expectations going into that. So if you have looked at really amazing product photography for, let's say, high-end audio equipment, but you're hiring a photographer who that's not they don't have a long track record or a track record doing that, you may not get exactly what you dream of,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So, um, you know,
Yeah,
that
I mean, it's hard because it can be subjective, and there's no we're not, this conversation wasn't to shame anyone, obviously. Although,
Yeah.
I lean a little bit into the shame personally. Jeff, you have some examples you wanted to, and Jeff, talk about these as you bring them up. By the way,
Yeah.
this just came in. The program is being broadcast at about 35,000 feet somewhere over the ocean, I believe. We've
oh,
got one of our good friends here is watching the program on a plane.
That's
So
right.
LinkedIn Live on a plane.
We
What
could
the
be
F?
everywhere.
Awesome. So Jeff, tell us what we're going to see and bring them up here and let's talk a
Yeah,
little bit about
so
this.
in this particular case, it was speaker drivers. So actually, like the pieces of a loudspeaker, and so the photography that originally was shown to us that the client had done themselves, actually not done themselves. They actually had somebody come in and do it. It to me, it's a lot of it. It was about preparation and then how much editing has to be done
mhm,
afterwards, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
you, as you know, Allison, if there isn't much for preparation beforehand, that's a lot of editing you have to do. Um, and so let me just I'll bring up like kind of the original photo that was presented to us. And and this was again, this ended up being a really positive experience, right? Because we were able to describe to the client, it's a photo, but when you get up close to it and you have to put this into a print or online, you can see all the dust and everything that's on it. So the piece wasn't prepared the correct way in terms of and the lighting's okay, but it's not like ideal. Um and Let me just move to kind of we ended up hiring a professional photographer who really specialized in lighting, and this was a very high-end product, a very expensive product.
Mm,
So we were looking for like that oh my head, like this looks unbelievable type of type of thing, that hero image. And so this is kind of like the
Mhm,
photography I mean, it's night and day, right? um it's
mhm.
incredible. And the thing is you look at this and you're like, oh my god, I have to own this.
right.
um and so that kind of experience I think was really great because it really just showed the level of detail in the preparation part.
Mhm.
And obviously everything had to be edited still, but when you have that initial raw photo, you have a good piece to work with for many different things.
Mm.
Right, right, and it's a beautiful image, and, so this was like a someone who specializes in product photography that you worked with for this, so they were probably in a studio setting where they were really had the wherewithal to light it appropriately, to, get those, like, beautiful reflections that you get, underneath, and then, of course, obviously, the skill to retouch it
Mhm.
and really take that image up over the top. And I think sometimes if people are new to brand photography, like you've got a business and you're in the business of providing the service that you do or making the product that you do, you're not a photographer, and that's not going to be top of mind for you. But I think sometimes what people don't uh, might not consider is that the photo is it's almost like the preparation and getting the image. That's like half of it. The other half is the developing of it and the retouching that kind of really gives it that look that you might be looking for.
Absolutely, and that's the thing I think that's interesting because in this case, those photos, they did not come at a cheap price. Uh,
No, no,
right? And nor
no.
should they. So one should not expect. But here's the rub. To me, those photos now belong to the client and they can use them uh, however they wish. I believe the deal was a full buyout on that. So,
Wow. Okay, that would be very expensive. Yeah,
and it wasn't
yeah.
cheap.
But it was
But
worth it, right? Because they have these images they can use.
now they have them, and that was the thing
Mhm.
I was saying was that, guys, you know, I think we came away with, I don't know, Jeff, would you say like 20, 30 photos
Oh
overall?
yeah,
You
easy,
know,
easy. They were,
but I was saying because of the quality of the photos, now we can crop them, we can zoom in and get macro on parts and just show the textures or the layers to the cones on the speaker without any
Mm.
fear of lint or God forbid a pubic hair or something like that. Sorry, God forbid. So that was like the part to me was you got these 30 photos, but really in a sense what you got, and you have a smart team working with you, is almost an endless supply of photos because they can be moved and reiterated and cropped and cut, and now you know exactly who to go back to the next
Mhm.
time you want to do your next batch. And in fact, with this client, they went back and did another batch of newer products.
mm,
So it really made a lot of sense. And for those of you that don't know, we are on with Alison Ashton today. And, she really broke it big when she joined us on one of our early podcasts. That's when she just exploded. No, she's been well known and working at Parade Magazine, and she's got her own The Content Kitchen, and she does a lot of would it be fair to say food and food photography, recipe development,
Yeah,
sort of?
yeah.
Yeah,
Food photography and recipe development. That is the core of what I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things we wanted to get into today, and this is what we've been talking about, if you're just tuning in, is brand photography, getting it professionally shot, getting it shot by the right kind of photographer. And again, just because you own an iPhone doesn't mean you're a photographer. It's just not the same thing. You have a better chance of taking a decent shot, but it just doesn't mean the same thing. There's so many elements that go into setting up a photograph and framing it and the composition. And then, of course, the after effects and post production work that have to be done in order to get everything even and fair. One of the things that drives, I think, a lot of creatives nuts, and I'm sure many, many founders as well. Oh, hi to the Melting Forest people, by the way. They're good friends and fans of the program. So we're going to try to get a Chilk Melting Forest collab together at some point. Anyway, we've talked to clients who say, and this is when your stomach flips over, and you go, do you have any photos, or what do you have? And they say, oh, we've got tons, thousands of photos in a folder. You can use those. Don't worry about it. We don't need to hire anyone because we can use those. And I go, great. I'm about to get sick. So the next question is, can we see them? When were they taken, and by whom? And what were they taken for? Because that, Allison, would you agree, is when you're taking pictures, you have to kind of understand where they're going to live.
Absolutely. I mean, you need to understand the context for the images. Like I just did a shoot for a client. They needed some images of their product in like kind of a lifestyle setting with food. Um, very specifically for Walmart, right? It's going to, because they sell a lot of product through Walmart. So they need the images for their products on Walmart with very specific parameters. And that was great because I knew exactly, I could go and see, and I could see what kind of images they needed, the aspect ratio, everything. So yeah, it's the more specifically you can define what you need them for, what you need those images to accomplish,
Yep.
the better. Now, do you find, as an agency working with clients, do you have to do a lot of that sort of client education, like kind of educating them on the value of this?
Mhm.
Because,
yes.
they've probably, like you said, they've taken all of these images with an iPhone, and frankly, you can get some pretty decent images with an iPhone.
Sure.
It can get you a pretty long way. And they've been, so they may not really recognize the need for taking that next step to hire a professional photographer to take their images. So is that a something that you find yourselves doing a lot?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And with I would say a very low percentile of success, to be honest with you.
When you do succeed with it, what is there sort of a what tends to be the aha moment for them?
When they see the questionable photography, when they see it in the format that, like, let's say a hero on a website, when they see it actually in the space that it's to be used in, and it doesn't fit or it's blurry, that's when they start to get, that's when they start to realize what's happening here.
Yeah, and if I could just speak a
Yeah.
little bit to that in terms of and Peter has mentioned this a couple of times, and you have as well, as composition. I think the discussion around composition, it comes up a lot in talking about websites, especially. They say, "Oh, we need a hero image. Can you use this image?" And then I say, "It needs to be rectangle." And then they say, "Oh," and I said, "The main focal points on the image needs to be either to the left or to the right, because we need to put a headline text on top of it. And that headline text is going to move because the site is mobile responsive." And so now we're in a discussion around an actual use case where they're like, "Oh, I can't have everybody in the middle because all their faces will be blocked by the text."
That's right. Yeah. And I think the other advantage is that when you bring in someone like of your caliber, Allison, like an agency person like myself doesn't actually, unless they want to be, which can be fun to do, is to go to these sessions and see and be a part of it, help in any way you can. But for us, when we've brought in someone like this guy John Early, who did those other photos that we showed, the beautiful ones, by the way. He's in California, or he was in Arizona. We weren't going to go out there and sit over his shoulder and you know manage it or direct it. There was no need. He knew exactly what to do. In fact, he did something that was better than we had even imagined could be done. And we gave him the basic framework for what we wanted, where we wanted to use them, how we wanted to use them. And he exceeded all expectations. And I think that's what you get when you go pro. And there's lots of levels to pro. I mean, you
Mhm.
don't have to break the bank on it. By the way, for anybody that's out there, and we've got hello to Canada, they're in the house, and Robert is westbound. He's given out a lot of information. We're going to kind of keep that sort of secure and tight over here, although he is putting it out live, so everyone
Actually,
knows.
let me just put up one of Robert's uh things here. Let me just show it for a
Sure.
second, because I do want to talk to this point. And it's funny how, like, these discussions come around, and we've mentioned it too in terms of um iPhones, right? We each have an iPhone, but we're not photographers. But the concept, though, is if you were a photographer and you had an iPhone, that's all you had to use, you could probably take some really good
Oh,
pictures.
they absolutely, yeah, they could do a lot with it. I mean, so it's still that basic understanding of composition and lighting and context and things like that, and you can get some great images.
Sure.
Yeah, just looking at Robert's comment, and that's absolutely true. You can get really good images, but I would say even with an iPhone image, you still want to edit it, and there's a lot that can happen, in post production that can enhance that image. Yeah, yeah.
And don't forget, folks, as always, you can drop your questions for Allison, Jeff, or I in the comments section, and we will do our darndest to answer them. Allison, this makes me think too, though, there are certain situations where stock photography comes into play.
Uh-huh.
And there's plenty of great stock photography sites out there, and it can be an inexpensive option. One of the things that I love stock photography and video for the right projects. I love to blend them with real photography and real video where necessary or if need be. It can be a powerful tool for storytelling, especially when you got to fill in those gaps where you're building a brand's visual presence and they don't have anything already produced or ready to go if they've taken a
Mhm.
Motorola Razr phone 10 years ago. But the idea being that stock is not a substitute for true strategic visual identity. And I have told people this a million times. I love to play stock roulette, especially when I'm stuck creatively. And when I say stock roulette, I'll go to one of my subscriptions and I'll put in some kind of a random request or prompt, and then I'll just spin the wheel. I'll just spin the wheel, and I'll close my eyes, and then I'll just click on whatever comes up, and then I'll take that photo and I'll creatively work around it to build my story or to see
Yeah.
if I can make the connection. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that the photo is going to end up in the ad or in the project at all, but it's a great way. There's so many ways you can use it. And even for like we've done this with a few clients, and I'll use this as an example. You know, I've had people say, well, that's not our mountain. And I go, it's a mountain. I know it's not the Swiss Alps, because that would be obviously not your mountain
Right.
in New Hampshire, but it's a mountain. And if you think anybody's going to go figure this out and then complain, you are wasting valuable time, friends. And the other side of it is same with a cup of coffee, right? You know, a steaming cup of coffee is a steaming cup of coffee. I don't know whose coffee it is. And frankly, I don't care. If you don't have a good picture of a cup of coffee that's steaming, I'm going to have to go find one. And that's the way it works. And that's how you get these things done until someone makes takes care of the business.
Well, one thing I'd like to add though about the stock photography, because Peter says this all the time. He's like, don't look at it's the opposite of Google search, right? So let me make the comparison. So Google search, you look at the first page, and they always say, like, if you want to hide dead body, put it on the third page of Google search results, right? So, but it's the opposite for if you're, let's say, on iStock or one of these others, is that you should go deep, because the ones that are on the first page, everybody picks those, and they're all over the web, and they're just not, they're so common. And if they just went deep, maybe 4 or 5 pages in, that they would find these nuggets of goodness that they could use.
That's so true. Also, I would just add to that, when you're looking for stock imagery or need to use it, and it's totally a great adjunct to what you might have. And like you said, it can tide you over until you've got the budget and the wherewithal to get the images you really want, that are really specific to you. Nothing wrong with that. Totally. I mean, you got to be practical, right? I would also, depending on your brand, iStock, Getty, Shutterstock, those are like the big stock agencies. But there are smaller ones, and some of them have very specific vibe that might be a better fit for what your brand's about. Like there's a great company, and I actually follow the I think she's the founder on Instagram. It's called Death to Stock. And
they're my new favorite.
Death to Stock, and they do very sort of cutting edge visuals, right? They're very into like what visual trends. So those are going to be not super generic, and they're not going to be a fit for everybody, right? It depends on the brand, depends what you want to convey with your images. But that's just an example of, stock photography that's not going to be the same old. It's funny, whenever I hear stock photography, I think of the actor Simu Liu, the Marvel actor. I guess early in his career, he was a model for stock photography, and there's like, you can find images. I don't know if they're still out there, but somebody noticed like when he was getting big that this is why he looks so familiar. Right. He's this guy that's in all of these stock images of the team in the office, and
I know, that's awesome.
I love that.
So, and they were very popular. They were images that were used everywhere for all kinds of things. So I would just say that, like, just kind of, if you're using stock photography, really kind of look for things that do reflect the visual vibe of your brand.
That's right. And the other thing is, you got to dig a little bit deeper. How many times have we all seen that very beautiful young woman with the red turtleneck and the lipstick smiling? She's like on page 1 if you look for smiling lady on any site. It comes up and everybody plugs her in. By the way, we have a question from our good friend Lindsay Reed at Emblem. And Emblem is one of my faves. She's great. They do custom merchandise. And her question here is very relevant. How often do you think you should update product or work photos on your website? Jeff, Allison, you want to I say every 5 seconds, but that's probably not
No.
Well, that's a good question. Certainly for if you've got product, obviously, if you're updating the packaging, which happens,
Mm,
you need to update the images. If you, and this comes up more like in like recipe development, because a lot of times when I'm working with a brand, they want to show the food, but they also want to show the packaging, the product. Understandably, you want people to recognize that product when they're in the store. Um, but some I will often recommend that we also get a version of that image without the product so that if you phase out a product or if you change the product packaging, you still have this image of the recipe that you could still use, right? You could still use it in social media, you can still use it in email newsletters. You
mm.
don't have to, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So certainly when there's an update to your packaging or you phase out a product, yes.
Yeah, and
Um,
I totally agree, like, on the product side and the catalog. In terms of, like, your homepage, I would say at least for your hero image, at least have that seasonality, right? So change it out, at least 4 times a year, at least that part, that would be like minimum. In terms of promotions and things like, or if you want to showcase a new product, I would say even if it's an e-commerce site every 30 days.
Mm.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, if you're having people coming back to the site, they want to see something new when they return. Um, it's your opportunity, especially if there's a cycle of reorders and things like that, where
Mhm.
you kind of understand, all right, so they're buying this now because we're running this promo. They'll probably be back in a few weeks or whatever. Let's have something else here.
That, and again, that can get into, you know, planning ahead for your needs. So if you do hire somebody that you get the full complement of images that you anticipate beyond your immediate need.
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and
And you
those images aren't really like specific like product page images. Those are more like banners that you would have on your
can,
site, that type of thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is dead on. I believe that uh, best case scenario for anybody in that position where they are looking for photography or starting something fresh, you got to audit what you have first. You've got to look at the content that you've got and really make some hard decisions. Are you attached to it for the right reasons? Are you planning to use it for the right reasons? And often I get it. Budget is always an issue, but if you haven't budgeted for high quality photography, again, if you're a look, I can show you if you're in the chandelier industry and you've got nothing but crappy photos of beautiful chandeliers, what are we going to do with those? It doesn't help you for us to
Mm-mm.
put those into a public space. But, say, hey, I can get a gorgeous, really high end, high definition photo of a similar like chandelier. um, it's a representation of storytelling, and it does the job. But the same
Mhm.
with, like, if you're doing someone's menu at a restaurant, you can't just take a picture of any chicken piccata and call it theirs. That doesn't
Yeah.
work, and that
No.
defeats the entire purpose. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, it needs to, yeah, yeah. And I think that's sort of where you have to make those judgment calls, and your client has to make those judgment calls. Like, what's, because they want to be a an honest representation of what they offer, so that the customer, whoever's buying it, gets what they expect, right?
Yes.
And um, yeah, it's kind of like those like really cheap, like Temu or something like that that you see on retailers that you see on like Instagram and stuff like that, and people are like, "This is what it looks like on Instagram, but this is what it looks like in
Yes,
reality."
yes.
And it's like,
That's
In
right.
my house,
you
we
know,
call that getting T-mood.
Right,
Um,
getting team with it's an
yeah,
actual
My
verb.
wife at this point has banned me from all Temu purchases without her oversight and approval. Yeah, I think I bought
But
a
yeah,
hamper
no, I
recently.
mean, I think that's spot on though, Allison, in terms of like, I talk about this about websites, but you see this on restaurant websites. Like you're setting an expectation as soon as they land there, what the food's going to be like, what the experience is going to be like inside. And when those expectations aren't met, they're not coming back.
It's very
Yeah,
simple.
yeah. If you want it to be, if you're a mom and pop place and that's what you do, be a mom and pop place
Right. Own it.
online. That's who
Okay.
you are. That's what you know, that's what people are going to come to you for. And another thing I would say about just speaking to like how often should you update images, I think if you're doing images that are very stylistically on trend, like really on trend, you want to kind of keep an eye out for when that trend starts to fade. You're going to want to update. Like,
Mhm.
like I know in, for example, food photography, 15, 20 years ago, it was all about very soft lighting, blown out, kind of natural light. And then it's moved to, kind of this very more hard light, more studio photography, which can also be beautiful and effective. I'm not making a judgment call, but these things do kind of cycle. And sometimes if you're like really like on top of trends, it might cycle more quickly.
Mhm.
So just, like, okay, we know that we may need to update to, because it's going to look dated. You don't want it to look super dated.
Just to revisit one of our the podcasts, in fact, that you joined us on 1/7 a while ago.
Mhm.
Has anything changed since we determined that cilantro was the Tom Cruise of the food photography world
Um,
because it was so difficult to work with? Has anything changed?
No, in fact, I was working with cilantro the other week and I was thinking back on that. I'm like, it's such a diva. It's such a diva. It's the diva herb.
yeah.
I,
And
you know,
it only has this certain time frame that you can use it, right?
That's right.
oh, it wilts like you can
Um,
practically see it wilting. Yeah, it wilts
right.
very quickly. Um, and of course, anything like that has to be chilled, like ice cream or a chilled beverage where you want the condensation. You're going to really want to get a good food stylist
Right.
in there.
Mm.
So, like, if you have a beverage brand and it's all about the chilled, that's another thing to consider when you have a photographer. It's not just the photographer; you're going to want a food stylist so
That's right.
that they can make it look great.
Speaking of beverages, again, sponsor of our program today is Chilk, milk and chicken together at room temperature in a chunky, tepid drink that's hard to choke back.
Oh,
You
no.
can find out more about Chilk at drinkchilk.com, and hope you'll do that. If anybody is interested at all, Allison, how can people connect with you and find out more about what you do and that sort of a thing? Do you want to leave us with a parting shot? Because I know we could go on forever, but you've got shit to do, unlike Jeff and I.
Yeah, they can just reach out to me on LinkedIn since that's where we are right now. Feel free to, if you have a question or if you're looking for any help with your food photography, or
Mm.
honestly, I've got a pretty good network as well. So if I'm not the ideal person, I might know someone who is.
Isn't
Yeah,
that what
that's
it's all
awesome.
about? Thank you so
Exactly.
much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Uh,
Well, thank you guys for having me, and thanks for your the people who are watching for all the great questions.
Absolutely. We're going to let you go and then we're going to finish up and pay a few more bills. And thank you so much, Allison. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Take
Talk
care.
soon. Cheers. All right, kiddos. So, I'm glad everybody joined us today. Also, we recently, Brandartica put out a ebook, a free downloadable ebook, because what the hell? Isn't that what all the crazy kids are doing these days? So I just wanted to let you know that it's there. And if you would like us to send you the link for a direct download, it's the Secrets of Branding. It's called the Mess That Makes the Magic, and it's all about getting your creative on and finding ways to create beyond beyond the when you're kind of in the chaos of it all, right? So hopefully you'll find that you can just drop us drop us a thumbs up in the comments section, and we will send each of you
We'll
the link
send it to you.
to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's totally free, and it's completely sterile and clean. Promise. Promise. All right. So other than that, Jeff, we were really just thinking about those one or two last things. As a final thought, do you have anything you'd like to share?
No, I think overall in terms of photography, if especially if you're selling your product direct, it's so important. It's so important that people get to see the product, they get to see all sides of it, that they get to almost experience the product before they actually press the add to cart.
Okay. So remember, your brand's visuals are really a first impression for most folks. You got to make it count. And whether you're using stock, custom photography, a professional photographer, or Aunt Hilda, you know, no offense, Aunt Hilda, you really want to keep an eye on the mix, a nice mix of photography and style. Make sure you've nailed down the kind of a style, the kind of lighting, the kind of consistency that fits or is aligned with your brand identity. If you don't have a brand identity, hang up and call 911. Actually, you just reach out
Don't
to
call
Jeff. Yeah,
911.
don't call 911. So yeah, that's the way to go. And for those of you who joined us today, we greatly appreciate it. We've got the newsletter where the Dogs of Society Howl. It comes out every Friday at this point, and it's a mix of a lot of different thoughts and a lot of different ideas and concepts, and we hope you'll find it helpful. There's also an opportunity to listen to Jeff and I on the 1/7th, the podcast. It's a series of questionable questions where we talk to founders, CEOs, creatives, branding, marketing, renegades, and all kinds of other degenerates. So anybody have any final thoughts or questions? I know cilantro does look like other things,
It does.
Richard, although I'm not quite sure what other things, maybe parsley.
Parsley, I would say it's the same family, I think.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. We should let everybody go back to the bar or wherever you are. And
Yes.
Jeff, it's been a pleasure as always. And
Always.
we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're out. Bye now.
Bye.